Um, Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about Gatsby, as you probably already heard, and demo a few things and so forth. So I will share my screen and get going. So Gatsby is a blazing fast static site generator for React. The project started around 3 years ago, and I was working on a startup at the time and this was like kind of latest 2014 when I first started thinking seriously about Gatsby. And I was working on a startup and we needed a website and been using React for our web app that we were building. Anyways, and I was like, I love React. My thinking at the time was like, I really love React, and like the whole ecosystem that's developing and just like how you develop stuff for the web is my favorite way that I've ever seen. And it'd be really awesome if there's an easy way to use React to build our startup's website, because it was kind of approaching that time. And I wanted something that was like really simple, that you could use Markdown, but like while building it, everything while building it, it'd feel like you were building just a normal React app. But when you finished it, you could just run a build command and it would spit out a static site, that you can just toss somewhere and it'd be super easy to manage. So anyways, that's where the first version of Gatsby came from. And then, and so it's very much like traditional kind of static site generators like Jekyll or Hexo or Hugo or, the 100 or 1,000 or however many other ones there are. And that works great for kind of like a small company website. And I also like ported my blog over to it. And then fast forward a year and a half or so, and I had quit the startup and was looking around for what to do next. And I've been thinking a lot about like Gatsby and what it could be. Because I also used to do a lot with CMS stuff in the past. So in college, I did a lot of kind of like Drupal client work. And then worked at Pantheon, which some of you might know, which is a startup here in San Francisco. And they started doing like Drupal hosting, Drupal developer tools, and also added WordPress later on. So anyway, so I had a lot of experience with just building stuff with CMSs and just kind of knowing what that world was like. And I was thinking that, okay, Gatsby is like really cool and it's gotten really popular kind of in its little static site niche, and like a lot of developers are using it to do kind of traditional developer type stuff. But it's like, but what if we could combine Gatsby with CMSs, and so that you could actually use Gatsby for kind of the normal type of websites that most websites are actually, that are driven by some sort of content store, which is managed by non-technical people. And so I started thinking a lot about that problem, and that's where kind of the next version of Gatsby came from, that was released last July, and which added kind of plugin support and GraphQL support, so that you could hook up Gatsby to any data source, including CMSs, but not limited to CMSs, and then very easily pull that into your pages and then build sites from that. So if we go to this, so there's like a bunch of example sites that me and other people in the community have built. So like one of these, for example, is showing off using Gatsby together with Contentful. And all the content on the site is drawn directly from Contentful. And so like this is like if you're familiar with Contentful, it has like the sample store space. And so like if you click on this, which is a product there, go straight to that. And then you see like all the products have like categories. And so if you click on that, you can see, the toys category. It also has like full localization support, so you can see the German version, so on. Not that you'd normally build a site this way. It's also cool too, though, that, well, anyways, that's a little extraneous. So yeah, I was really happy with how that turned out, that, you don't just have, so Gatsby started with, what if we had the beautiful development experience of React and then combine that with kind of static site generation, so that it's super easy to deploy and to run the website, but also it's really fast because once it's static, then you put it on a CDN. And so whoever's visiting your site from wherever, they get like crazy fast load speeds. Anyways, and so, that was kind of where it started. And then Gatsby V1, it added the ability to pull in data from anywhere, which makes Gatsby way, way more powerful and flexible. Because, at the end of the day, a website isn't much without data. You have to get data in there somehow. And so making that really easy to do, to get data into Gatsby from wherever is kind of one of its main goals. Cool. So let me show off some interesting features of Gatsby. So you look here on the front page, modern web tech without the headache. If any of you have been in the JavaScript space the last few years, you know how fast everything is moving. And Babel and Webpack and all the CSS options and like the changing versions of React and so forth. It's actually really complicated. I've actually been working on Gatsby V2 recently, and I kind of renewed appreciation for how complex this stuff can get, because I've, Saturday, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I was just like banging my head against Webpack the whole time because we're doing an upgrade from Webpack 1 to Webpack 3. But yeah, I mean, the benefit though is that adopting Gatsby is that you literally have to do nothing to get all these things working. There's a very carefully maintained kind of configuration that's like fully production optimized, that all you have to do is install Gatsby and off you go. And you have kind of the benefits of like all these awesome tools, but without the pain of having to configure them and, just for this particular use case. Another is kind of like what we're talking about, bring your own data. So, you're building a website, you have data in lots of places. And so instead of writing a bunch of custom scripts to pull stuff in, you have the Gatsby source plugins, which do that. And like static site generator, as you know, Gatsby shares this benefit with all static site generators that, if you can serve your website as static files, you just kind of eliminate a lot of complexity and difficulty in scaling your website. You don't have to worry about databases. You don't have to worry about web servers. And that's just a huge time and cost suck that just goes away, which is awesome. And then I really think that the future of the web is JavaScript, the Jamstack, a lot of people call it. And more and more, websites need to be basically not just a website, but an app. It's not just like, hey, throw some content on the internet and we're good. It's about like delivering kind of rich experiences along with the content. And because, in Gatsby, everything is React, it's really easy, if you need to add, kind of like interactive stuff, it's really trivial to do that because you're in React land the whole time. So these last two are kind of just on like speed, which is one of the, one of the strongest selling points of Gatsby, is that, it has a lot of optimizations built in to make loading and running the website really, really fast for your users. So if any of you are familiar with the progressive web app idea, Gatsby implements all those ideas for you, again, out of the box. And so one thing, for example, is, when you're clicking around a site, you don't have to wait to request to the server to get that next page, because Gatsby actually prefetches all the content necessary for the next page before you click on it. So when you click on it, it's, well, it would be near instantaneous, except I think Zoom is frozen me. Maybe. Let's try it again. Okay. Anyways, so there's no delay as you click around. So another nice optimization that Gatsby's done is there's support for kind of image transformation. So it's really easy with some GraphQL to query for responsive images. By which I mean, like, when you you have an image, so you have like the raw image, like say it's 2,000 pixels wide. and that's way too big to be serving on your website. And so you want to like transform it down to like the right size. So say the design requires a 200 pixel wide image, which is great, except you also need to account for retina screens. So you really need like a 200 pixel and like a 300 pixel and then like a 400 pixel, and then maybe like a 600 pixel or something like that for all these different variations. And that's really, can be really kind of painful to set up. But Gatsby makes it really straightforward to do that with its built-in image transformation, plus this kind of official image component. So if you click on, so it has all these different options for setting up stuff. So you can actually do like the blur up effect, like right out of the box. So you click on that, and then eventually the image will come in, maybe. Not sure what's going there. It also has like support for like traced SVGs. So you kind of have like a filtered background of that. Just a quick demo of prefetching capabilities. So if we open up the network tab and we go here, then we can see stuff. Okay, so let's clear it out. So Gatsby only. No. Do that again. So Gatsby doesn't just. So Gatsby like tries to be really smart about prefetching. It doesn't prefetch everything right away, but it actually has support for the intersection observer API, which is pretty new. But anyways, what it lets us do is it lets us wait until a link pointing to another page has appeared on the screen before we prefetch that page's data. So as we scroll down the site and we get near the bottom where there's some links to blog posts, those will get prefetched for us. So there we go, yeah. So this is, yeah, so this is the latest blog post. You can see here that it's like bright future for the web. It was also, so anyway, so this is the data for the page, and then this is the template blog post. So this is the blog post template, the React component, the React code necessary to render that page. It was also interesting too is that you can see the image of the author came up here. So just a little image there. And that's because we also lazy load images automatically. And so as we scroll down, you can see more coming in. Yeah, and then if you click on one, then there's no refresh because it's already there. Cool. Cool. So how much time do I have left, roughly?
Like 18 minutes. So
okay.
You can have like another 10 minutes or so.
Okay, cool. So I want to do a quick demo of some stuff. But any questions real quick? Just about kind of the overview of Gatsby. Okay, no questions, I guess.
Yeah, no questions so far. So.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Gatsby has a getting started guide here. And Gatsby has a CLI command that lets you do a number of things. So we'll go first to this here and jump over to my terminal. Well, so we have this Gatsby new command, and then, oops. So you have this Gatsby new command, and then you give it the name of the site. And you can also optionally give it a URL to a starter. So there's a number of official starters and then community starters that like all sorts of kind of different types of configuration, which is pretty cool. But anyways, we'll just do the default starter, which is just kind of a pretty basic setup. Anyways, and so it clones the starter repo, and then it runs the install automatically for you, and then pushes you into the directory. But I already have it checked out here, so we'll just go here and speed up things a bit. So the next step you can do is you run Gatsby develop. And when you run Gatsby develop, it sets up a hot reloading development environment. So let's run that. Stop this. Normally it goes much faster than that. Yes. Okay. Anyways. Okay. So yeah. So here is the kind of default starter. Very simple. It has 2 pages. Go to the second page. Go back. So it's like really fast. It's just running on your local computer. Yeah. Let's look at some code real quick. So, oops, that's not what to do. So if we look at, yeah, so if we look at like the root directory, has like a README, it has a few Gatsby specific files, and then a package.json, like any node project, and then it has the source directory. If we look at that, it has a components directory, CSS, layouts, pages. We'll look at pages because that's the most interesting part. So here you can see it has an index page and a page 2. And so these correspond to this. So these JavaScript files are just React components. And so any React component you add to this pages directory automatically get turned into a page in your site. So if we open up the index.js file, you can see that it's just a very simple React component. Is this readable? Let me make this bigger. You see this very simple React component. And so if we say, we edit something, we say hello Berlin, save that. It will update in a bit here. So yeah. Yeah, and so anyways, and so hot reloading works for pretty much anything that you can edit on a site. So earlier I mentioned there's like all these examples directories. So if we go to using Contentful, actually I haven't run this in a little while, so I think it should work. But anyway, so if we start this one up now, show you a few other things. Well, actually, let me show you so the Gatsby config file is where you add plugins. And so here you can see that we add this Gatsby source Contentful, and then you just add the space ID and access token. And then it just kind of works. So if we then run Gatsby develop, so here you can see it's starting to fetch data from Contentful. And then it grabs 10 updated entries and 11 updated assets. Only took a second. How fast? Then okay. So if we refresh this page, now it's going to be the Contentful starter. So same thing if we, if we look at the file directory, it's like basically the same. It's got a few Gatsby-specific stuff, package.json. If we look at source, has pages directory again, plus this templates directory, which we'll talk about in a second. So if we look at, source pages index, oops. So this again is the front page here. You can see again, it's a React component and has, a bunch of things. So the new thing here though is it has at the bottom a GraphQL query. So this, I mentioned this earlier when talking about like how does data get from sources into Gatsby. And how that works is that the source plugins, they like pull in data from wherever they're configured to pull data from. And then that is exposed to your components through a GraphQL schema. It's kind of like Gatsby creates a database on the fly from your data from remote sources or local sources. It's the same with like Markdown or JSON or whatever locally. And then you can write queries against it. So this, for example, has two queries, one for the English and one for the German. And it's querying, this all contentful product. And so it says, and also filter so that the locale is, English US. And then it gets, the product name for each thing, and then an image for each one. And so if you look back up here, you can see English US has the product names and has an image for each one. So the data for this UI right here came directly from the GraphQL query here. And then the same with like the German version here, it's right there as well. So if we like go up, if we search for all contentful product, actually wait, it'd be US, sorry. This is like so in GraphQL you can create aliases for queries. So we renamed all contentful product to US. So anyway, so if we go up here, now we have this product edges. And then down here, we can see that we're mapping over the data and then passing it to the product component, which is up here, which then actually spits out the code. Which anyways, I mean, if you're not familiar with GraphQL and React, that probably seems a bit overwhelming. But once you're used to it, it's a very powerful and fluid system for kind of designing out UI and then building it. Because all you have to do is say, okay, I sketched out in my mind or on paper, this is what I'm trying to build. And then you just identify the data that you need, and then you query that, and then you build up the UI you need. There's no ceremony. It just kind of shows up. So included with the Gatsby development server is this GraphQL. And GraphQL has a built-in way to kind of explore your schema. So you can see all these different types that came from the contentful data. So if we like do the product again, and we run that, we can see all these different fields that we can query. We can do the slugs, we can do the tags, we can do the price, on and on, quantity. So yeah, so it's like your whole data, your whole schema is now available. So like looking at this, so if we flip back here, down here we have the product name and then the image. But what if we wanted to list the price on the front page as well? So what we could do is we could just add, we could add price there, and we save that, and then when we save a query, it gets rerun. And then here, we could add, so we should add it, we'll just add it at the end of the name. So we have the product name, and then we can just add here, node.price, and then it should show up, hopefully. Ah, there we go. So now we have the price. Let's actually add a little parentheses around it. Cool. Anyways, so doing stuff like that is really simple. You can be like, oh, I need some more data. I want to make some change. You add it to the query, and then you tweak the component, and then it's all shows up in front of you. Cool. Let's see. Yeah, so Gatsby is growing super quick. We're up to almost 19,000 stars, and just like tons and tons of contributions from the community. We're up to like 633 contributors, which is just like crazy. Like I wake up in the morning and there's like 5 PRs from overnight. Actually, I didn't even do that. So yeah, so I mean, just in the last week, there's been 65 pull requests from 34 people. Look at the last month, and it's like 100 plus people have contributed to Gatsby. So anyways, it's just improving at a really rapid rate, which is really fun to see and help shape and move along. And so yeah, so we'd love more of you, building awesome stuff with Gatsby and contributing to the project. And you also see here a bunch of example sites people have built, not example sites, but just sites people have built on all sorts of different stuff. Yeah, so that's my presentation, and probably a bit of time to answer a few questions if anyone has one.
Yeah, thank you guys. So if anyone has a question, we can hand you the mic. Okay, I actually have a question. What are the most, like the top features in V2 in Gatsby actually?
Yeah, so V2 is going to be really exciting. We're upgrading to the latest versions of a lot of upstream packages. So, Webpack 3, React 16, Babel 7, and all of these have like a ton of great new features. Better ES6 support. React 16 has like portals, it's smaller, it's faster. Babel 7 has support for a bunch of new JavaScript features that they didn't get into Babel 6. And one of my favorites is the, if any of you use CoffeeScript, maybe some of you still use CoffeeScript, there's like the soaker feature where you're like accessing along, deep object, and you got a question mark, to kind of soak up nulls. Anyway, so it's adding support for that. And anyways, yeah, those are kind of the headliners. We have like a few tweaks for making to the APIs. Most APIs will be exactly the same. Actually, most Gatsby sites will be, you can upgrade without any change whatsoever, which is really fun to see. But we're making a few tweaks to a few APIs to simplify things. But yeah, I mean, so V2 is mostly a upgrade to our upstreams. And then V3, which we're going to start on immediately after, the focus will be on, making Gatsby more scalable. So right now, Gatsby hits its limit somewhere around like 5,000 pages. And we want to make that, limit go away. So you can basically build as large a site as you want, and it'll work great. Excuse me.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, there's another question here.
Hello. When would you not use Gatsby?
When can you not use Gatsby?
When you wouldn't, like if there's some place where you wouldn't advise to use it, but stick with Create React App or something?
Yeah, I mean, Gatsby has more opinions than Create React App. Like Create React App is pretty vanilla, which is great oftentimes. And so there's sometimes like assumptions Gatsby makes about what you're doing that aren't true. So if you don't want, server rendering of pages, that can just add complexity that, doesn't help your project. And also Gatsby has kind of like a runtime for the prefetching things. So again, that can create some extra complexity that you don't need. So I think like a lot of like simple experimental apps, sometimes if it's purely a client-side app, you're never going to, it's only for logged in users, then, a lot of Gatsby's optimizations just don't help much. But I mean, I think Gatsby is a fantastic a fantastic tool for any kind of CMS or traditional static site type thing, as well as, most kind of web apps, and especially any web app where you have like quote unquote static pages. So if you have like a login page, or if you have like a marketing, a few marketing pages that are attached to the app, then like Gatsby works fantastically well, because you can build those with CMS, or you can build those with Markdown, and then you can build your app alongside it as well. And you're using React for the whole thing, and you have one build process and one deployment pattern and so forth.
Another question?
Hi, thanks. So question is, what would happen if some person decided that, well, I have this React component, so why don't I just, I don't know, start fetching data from servers? So what would happen?
So what would happen if the server where you're fetching data stopped working?
Yeah, if you add some logic to your React component in there and fetch data in the actual page, right? Yeah.
So I mean, most of your data in your site should be like put together at build time. Like when I was clicking around like the Contentful thing, like all the data is coming from static JSON files. You're not actually fetching it live from Contentful. It's the same with any other data source. But yeah, if you do have like a live API that you're fetching data from as part of running your site, then yeah, I mean, you have to make sure that that stays up, or else your site will break. But the nice thing though is that if your data is fairly static, then it's very reliable, because yeah, I mean, static sites just don't go down. They're very hard to go down because they're so simple.
Hi. It's regarding the page transform or transitions. I saw on the documentation that there is an approach to do that. Are there any examples out there to transition from one page to another? Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. There is an example site for. I don't think actually is running. Unfortunately, I don't have like a live example of that, but yeah, there's a page transition example showing you how to do that. So yeah, you can do like fading, fade between sites, or fade between pages rather, or any other kind of CSS driven transition effect that you want to do.
Okay, but as I said, I mean that one isn't working, and I tried it, and I didn't get it to work. So
oh really?
I have one that is working. So, because I mean, in the documentation it mentions something about the Gatsby browser.js that implements a rendering method, I think. And it would be great to have something to have a more fancy transition.
Like so you're saying, so you said this one doesn't work, but then there's something else in the documentation that.
Yeah, the documentation mentions the Gatsby browser.js, and that you can modify the React rendering thing.
Oh, yeah, that's for
example there.
Yeah, that's for something different. Yeah, I'll have to look at this. I wasn't aware this wasn't working, because yeah, last time I mean, I didn't build this. The last time I checked was months ago, so I'll look at it to see what's going on. But I mean, you can always use something like animate. So like for simple transitions, you can use something like animate.css, so that when the new page mounts, you can do like a fade in or slide in from the left, whatever. So stuff like that is like very trivial to do. This example here is for more complex like crossfades, but apparently it's complex enough that it died. So sorry about that.
You mentioned support for multiple data sources.
Uh-huh.
Have you looked at the use case of multiple repositories of flat files?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally possible. So if you go to so there's a plugins page, and then source files. So here's all the different source plugins. And then, anyway, so here, this Gatsby source file system is what the plugin for getting data off your file system. And so you can like create as many instances of this as you want. And so if you had multiple GitHub repos, for example, that you're building from, you would just have to you just have to have an instance of Gatsby source file system pointing towards each repo. So the main difficulty there isn't on Gatsby side. It's more coordinating, cloning each one, because you know with Gatsby or any static site generator, ideally you're building these things automatically, and so you need to have some way of cloning each one to the right place, and then having Gatsby built from that.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. Does Gatsby have PWA features like offline storage? Since you mentioned all that smart prefetching things, so can it, for example, cache the thing and when I go offline on a flaky connection, show me fallback page or actual data?
So I think quick support for what again? Sorry.
Service worker offline.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so it has full support for service workers. There is a plugin as well, which does kind of a drop-in adding of offline support. This Gatsby v1, this isn't entirely foolproof. Gatsby v2, it will be a lot better for some sort of complex reasons. But anyways, yeah, so this is fairly straightforward to get going. Actually, most websites, you can just add this plugin directly and it'll just work.
Great, thanks.
Follow-up question, do you have a rough timeline for V2? Is there an ETA?
My goal is by the end of the month. So, I mean, I'm working on it full time right now, so making good progress. But as you know, programming stuff is full of hidden pitfalls.
We know.
So we'll see what happens.
So thanks very much, Kyle, and a big round of applause for you.